Hello, everyone, and welcome to our midweek check-in with Laurie Smith. That's me. I'm glad to be here. And this is just a survivor chat that I like to do for adult survivors of child abuse. So I do these quite often, and sometimes I'll do them, sort of like on a weekly basis. So that's what I'm trying to do. So, hopefully you'll get something out of this if you're a survivor of child abuse, especially or a survivor of abuse of any type, really. And it's just a catch up, sort of what's been going on, coping mechanisms that I use to help me get through, and, sort of a bit of encouragement for survivors of abuse who, may not have anybody to talk to, no validation, you know, isolated, especially with this COVID-19 issue that we have going on right now. So, which most people were quite isolated for a long time. So hopefully, that's you'll get something out of this. If anything, just to encourage you to keep going. That's what I do, and because I have to encourage myself to keep going, and so that's what I like to do for others too. So that's what we'll be doing today. I don't really have too much of a topic today, except for that I wanted to talk about. I was going to do a show on Sunday for Mother's Day because I always do. I tend to do one around Mother's Day and Father's Day because both of my parents were my abusers, and that's a hard day for me. Mother's Day and Father's Day, I don't do well on those days because I don't miss my parents at all. They were my abusers, and they were responsible for the destruction of our family. And so, yeah, no, I don't miss them at all. But it does cause me grief that day because everybody's, especially now with social media, with posts, everybody's, and I'm happy for the people that had good mothers and good fathers. That's wonderful because it makes me happy that there are good parents out there that, love their children and take good care of them and bring them up right and love them. And that's wonderful, and that makes me happy. Actually, it does make me happy to know that. And but it's the day personally to me is always a bit of a downer. It's like Mother's Day. It's like, it's like okay, and the fact that I lost my baby, I was never able to have children, and the CSA, child sexual abuse, that I suffered as a child. Made sure that was the case. I would never be able to carry a child. So I lost my baby half midterm and was never able to become pregnant again. And so that was many years ago. So I grieved over that many, a long time ago. But the issue is that Mother's Day, when it comes around, is kind of a little bit of a downer for me. It's like, it reminds me of my mother, which is just like, oh boy. Yeah, no, it's just it's hard. These things are hard. So calendar dates are a problem. I was going to do a show, but I came home from work. I just recently got a part-time job, which I was off for 16 months because of COVID-19. Just not able to find work, but I finally found a part-time job, which I'm so thankful. But Mother's Day, I came home from work and my sink was full of this black sludge, my kitchen sink. And I was like, they were doing asphalt repairing in the back parking lot of the building, and the drain had got backed up somehow because of the sludge, and it went all the way up to the top floor of this condo building that I live in, and affected certain suites. Mine was one of them. And so I came home and my sink was full of this black asphalt sludge that I had to keep trucking to the bathroom because to dump it down the toilet because it kept coming up and it was overflowing my sink, and it was just a big mess. It was like a nightmare. It really was. So that was Sunday. So that was Mother's Day. So it ended on a good note. I was just like, what a crappy day. I wanted to do a broadcast when I got home to sort of for survivors of abuse who were abused by their mothers, to just encourage them and just be a bit of validation for people. So, but it was a rough day, and they came to fix the plumbing, which was great. The plumber came, fixed it all, and the mess was cleaned up, so that's fine. But I just was going to talk today about the issues of how hard it is to deal with this stuff, especially when these calendar dates roll around, and um, you know the feelings that sort of come with it, and how to deal with it, because every year it rolls around. And every year, I didn't used to handle it so well. Back before I started my healing journey, this sort of thing would have set me off to into a depression, um, a lot of anger, and which I never wanted to hurt anybody else, so it just becomes sort of self, um, you know, almost then self harm because I was didn't want to hurt anybody else. So I had suicidal tendencies. So um, it was never, I didn't handle it well before I started my healing journey. Once I got on my healing journey, I started to learn how to cope, like, and how to get through this stuff, and just getting support. Really, it just made all the difference. Just being able to talk with people who in survivor groups who could understand, somewhat what you've been through, what I've been through, and just offer some support, right? So that was very, very helpful. And reading all sorts of materials, it did help a lot. And just now, what I do is I just allow myself to feel the feelings instead of shutting them off. And which then they, if you stuff that stuff and you don't deal with it, it keeps getting stuffed to the point where eventually it's going to explode. And that's what I do. So now what I do is I just allow myself to feel the feelings, whatever it is, and but I don't stay there. So if I need to have a day where I'm just kind of, not coping very well, just crying or sad or down or depressed or angry or whatever it is, I just allow myself to go ahead and feel that stuff, but I don't stay there. Because once that, I get through that, then I'm like, okay, well, let's do life now. This is the here, this is the now. That was the past. It's like, can't go back and change that stuff. But what I have learned is how to change the way I feel about myself and change the way that I handle and cope with things. So it certainly has made a big difference for me. And it's taken a long time. This didn't happen overnight. Like, I started this healing journey back in 2007, really, but I didn't do any work till 2009, and so any real work on it. So 2009, it's been 12 years. So it's taken me a long time, to work through this stuff. And every year that kind of comes around, I sort of gauge like where I was when I started to now, and it's a lot better, a lot better. I'm so much more able to cope than I used to be with anything because I'm working through this stuff. You know what I mean? And it's hard. Like I said, it's not easy. It didn't happen overnight. Certainly not. And it's these things are hard. They really are. Life is hard. So for everybody at certain points, right? We all face all sorts of tragedies and difficulties in our life at some point. And even if a person hasn't, probably will down the road, unfortunately, because that's what life is really all about. It's it's these ups and downs, and it's like things are great when it's up, but when it's down, it's like, oh no. So yeah, it's I'm learning how to deal with those downs, you know what I mean? The stuff when things are just falling apart, nothing's working, you know, and life just seems like it's too much. It's like I'm learning how to deal with that down curve. And that's important because now instead of being this crazy ride that I used to be on, it's like it's much more leveled out. It's like, and I love it. I absolutely love it because I determine now how what like I'm not reacting to things like I used to. I choose what I react to. And so I've learned how to um, regulate my emotions, I guess is what it is. I guess if I was seeing a therapist or a counselor, that's probably what they would tell me is it's just learning how to regulate my emotions so that I'm not on this crazy high or really low situation all the time, which is really hard on a person. And so it's much better this way, because I'm not really phased by much anymore. It's like I've already been through it. I've seen it. It's like I've experienced it. I've been through a lot in my lifetime, and most people have. If you live to be 55 or older, life is tough and it throws some stuff at us that we don't want. And we think, wow, why me? That's what I'm always thinking. Like, why me? Is this just my life? Is it just shitty? Like, what's going on? But everybody has this stuff, yeah, the things that just, you're just like, why? Things were going so good, or things were going okay, or whatever. And then all of a sudden it's like, boom. And you have to deal with something that you really don't want to deal with, you know, health issues, job issues, financial issues, COVID-19. We're all stuck with that. And, hey, life is hard, man. Natural disasters, that's a problem. And, yeah. So, yes, people around us. This stuff is so incredibly hard. It really is. And to not deal with it and just be in denial. I mean, some people may be able to get through like that. It was killing me to do that. I needed to actually be able to work through this stuff and cope, and so life is hard. And I need to learn how to cope with this stuff because, sure enough, more of it's coming. More of that crap is coming that we don't want, and it's like, yeah, my health is going down. And I mean, it's gradual, but things are hard, right? And eventually, hey, you live long enough, it's game over. We all can't. No, nobody gets to stay here. You know what I mean? So I decided that my husband was terminally ill for many years, and 17 years actually, and he taught me a lot, a lot. I learned a lot from him, just watching his behavior, watching how he dealt with things, and learning that life doesn't have to be a crisis. Because I grew up in crisis, my parents' crisis they created for us. Life wasn't a crisis, but living with them was a crisis because everything was a crisis with them. And so I thought that's what life was about, crisis, and living with my husband, like he showed me that life doesn't have to be a crisis. And even these things that seem to be so absolutely unlivable or undoable, can be doable. Depends a lot on how we choose to see it. And he really chose to see, he was very sick. I mean, he just chose to live one day at a time, not worry about tomorrow, and, live the fullest life possible in that one day. And so that's what we did for 17 years together as a couple. It really taught me a lot, let me tell you. It didn't necessarily heal me from my child abuse issues, but what it did do was help me to learn that this stuff, I can get through this stuff. And, it doesn't have to be a crisis. And that bad things do happen and we need to learn how to deal with it. So it's hard. He passed away in 2018 and, he was a bit worried for me because he's like, he knew I had suicidal, ideation. And, I was abused as a child, so he knew all about my stuff. And, he knew me the best of anybody on the planet, really. I mean, I was with him for almost 25 years. So he would know me best, of course. But he was worried for me. He's like, I don't know what you're going to do, when I go. And I'm like, well, I'll just have to keep going until I don't go anymore. I'm going to have to just keep going. I'm not giving up. And he was glad. He's like, I'm glad. That's good. He wants me to fight. He wanted me to fight, stay alive and do well and, to heal and find peace in my heart. And over the years, I have found a lot of peace. And, it was a great experience to live that life with him, to share that with him. And he taught me a lot. But I still have moments where it's hard. It's very, very hard. I mean, all last year I thought I was going to be homeless because I didn't have a job. I'm like, well, where's this month's rent going to come from? Unless it comes from the government, I don't know. Because, COVID-19 is causing problems for people all over the world. And it's a mess. And so, I managed to hang out, and make it through that. I thought, but what if I didn't and I ended up homeless? Would that be the end of the world? I thought, no, I'll just go do my thing out there and have a good time. Make some new friends. It's like I've decided that I'm not going to let this life get me down. Because it's already been hard. And it's like, okay, I am not going to be defeated by this stuff, My parents couldn't kill me. My abusers didn't kill me. They couldn't get me to kill myself, so I'm going to keep going. That's kind of it's always in the back of my mind. It's like, yeah, I have to keep going. You know what I mean? And it's hard. These things are hard. They really are. I finally started getting some help with my mobility issues, and my doctor. I got a pretty good doctor now. He's way better than the other one that I had. He wasn't doing anything for me, and this guy's really cool. He got me cortisone shot for my ankle, and he got me cortisone shots for my hips. Well, cortisone, it's like, it mess your joints up and stuff later if you use it too much. But I don't care because I'm in so much pain. It really doesn't matter. It's like, look, you just got to do something, and they don't want me to start on heavy drugs. So they're like, cortisone shot, because I want to stay walking. I want to keep walking. I don't want to end up in a wheelchair unless I have to be. So it's tough. These things are so hard. So I had to start using my cane, which really sucks. I've been trying to go without my cane, for a long, long time, and I did. And until just recently, I've decided that, yeah, I'm able to walk a lot better with it, and it's less painful on my bones and my joints if I use it. And that stuff is hard, It's like, oh, what a drag! It slows me down. It slows me down walking with a cane. But hey, you got to do what you got to do. And I remember when my husband had to go into a wheelchair, he was just like, it is what it is. And, he used to be strong, 6'5", big, tall, military guy, big dude, and strong. And then, he ended up in a wheelchair, and he was just like, just got to roll with it. There's not much else he can do. So I try to remember his attitude and the way that he dealt with things, for my own personal life. And it's like, yeah, it is true. There isn't much we can do about this stuff. It is what it's going to be, is what it's going to be. They told me I'd be in a wheelchair by 50, and I'm 55 and I'm still walking. So I'm like, that's great. I'd like to stay walking. So I'm going to fight. I'm going to keep trying, as long as I can, keep walking. But these things are hard. They really are, because they affect your life. And it's like, wow, at the end of the day, sitting around, sometimes this stuff can get overwhelming. It's like, it sort of all hits sort of all at once sometimes. And it's like, wow, what a load, It's kind of like, well, these things are hard, but it's okay to feel the feelings, like I said. And then before, I would have just shoved that all down and, everything's fine, everything's fine. It's like, no, now I go ahead and I allow myself to get grumpy and get angry and throw my little pity parties. I call it a pity party, but it's really just having a day of sort of despair and whatever. But I just don't stay there. That's all. And that's helped me, because that allows me to get that stuff out. So this whole Mother's Day thing, I actually wrote quite a few poems to my mother and about my mother. They're on my website. And sometimes I think about them and I'm like, every time sometimes I have these memories of my mom's face. I actually look a lot like her. We look a lot alike. I look like my dad too, actually, a mix between my mom and my dad. And so sometimes I see in my mind's eye, because she passed away many years ago, her smiling, like, for somebody's taking a picture or something. And I always loved my mom, always. I mean, when I was a teenager, I thought I hated her, but I actually didn't. I actually really loved her, but I hated what they did. I absolutely did, and I still do. But I don't miss her. No, not at all. It's like my life is good now that she's not in it. But it's sad. It is sad, because I think of that smile, and I think, she had a smile for neighbors. She had a smile for other people, but not her children, and that's sad. That's really sad. She had nice things to say to her friends, the neighbor friends that she had. These women, these friends of hers, that they got along, and she'd go and spend the day at their house or whatever and have coffee. And I remember, her laughing and having a good time. And then I remember coming going home and the trauma and the crisis that she and my dad would be responsible for causing in the home. And it's like, she had smiles for other people and love for other people, but not for her children and not for her husband. And the same with my dad. He had his little his buddies and his friends at church and stuff, and he could smile and have a great time there. And then he'd come home, but he had no love for his children, no love for his wife. So this is, those things are hard, right? And I think that's where a lot of times survivors of abuse will remember certain things about, especially if it was a close family member who was the abuser, somebody that's supposed to love and care for you, whether it's a parent or somebody in the family. And some of the memories that we might have of them laughing or smiling or whatever, it's confusing because it's like, well, I'm supposed to love that person, but they hurt me. Oh, okay, I guess I'm supposed to just forget about that. Forget about the fact that they hurt me. You know, um, it's now some people. It depends on the type. It depends on the severity of the abuse. I think sometimes. I mean, obviously, parents aren't perfect, and neither are children, right? So parents can have a bad day too, right? That's not abuse, really. I mean, it can be considered abuse, especially if they abuse and kill a child because they had a bad day. What I'm talking about is parents can say hurtful things too, and but children can be cruel too. And so it's kind of like, these a healthy parent-child relationship. The parent would make it right. Have a bad day and say something they shouldn't say to their children. They should make it right. Let the child know, well, it's not your fault. I was having a bad day and I'm sorry and apologize. That's not abuse. What I'm talking about is parents who, beat and bash and batter and trash their children physically, verbally, emotionally, psychologically. That's what I'm talking about. And sexually too, some. I was abused sexually by my brother, not by parents, but some people are abused by their parents sexually. And the thing is it's incredibly wrong, you know. And that survivor, might have this view in their mind, this old memory of the abuser sitting there smiling or laughing and with somebody else. And it's so hard to separate that out. It's like, because I think that's where my sister is. She holds on to this rolling pin that my mom bashed my head in with and almost killed me. She wanted to kill me. Something made her stop. I don't know what it was. She probably thought, oh God, I don't want to do jail time. So, yeah, she literally busted my head open with this rolling pin, this huge, heavy duty, handmade rolling pin that my grandfather had made for her. So, anyway, my sister holds that thing and loves it, like cherishes it. Mom's rolling pin, look. And I'm like, that thing needs to be burned in a fire pit, and spit on and stomped on, sent down to the pits of hell. My mom bashed my head with it and beat well, okay, I won't cuss here, but seriously, that was not okay. And my sister just loves this thing because it reminds her that my mom made good cookies and she was a good baker, and this was my mom's rolling pin. So she loves this thing. And it's just like, that makes me angry because she doesn't care at all that my mom totally could have killed me with that thing. She doesn't care. She doesn't care that my blood was on it. She doesn't even care, you know. Seriously, I was laying a pool of my own blood. It's like, hello. My sister's like, oh, mom's rolling pin. I'm like, that's why I don't talk to my sister. I'm like, look, you're living in some other reality, man. I'm happy for you. Good for you. I'm not doing your reality. I'm doing mine, which is to get peace in my heart from what happened to me. So, my mom didn't do that stuff to my sister. She did slap her around, but my mom abused me much more than my sister. Absolutely. But the thing is it's just horrible, horrible, horrible. And then I sit there and I think of these pictures of my mom with these neighbors, there's pictures in my mind of my mom smiling and so nice to the neighbors, and then come home and just trash her family, And so every time I have somebody from the past who will say something, about my mother, like, oh, I can't believe that you would have, you know, said all that stuff about your mother and your dad and all this. And I'm like, man, if you want to listen to the truth and the reality, sit back and listen to my stuff. Otherwise, buzz off because I don't care. You know what I mean? My mom maybe may have had a good relationship with you, but she didn't with her children. So that's the problem with abusers, right? Adult abusers don't have relationships with the children, and neither do their friends usually. So abusers quite often have many friends and supporters where the abused children don't. And then everybody's like, I can't believe you would rat out your parents. It's like, you betcha. I told the world. I'm like, yeah, I'm telling the world and I don't care because it's the truth, every bit of it. And I'm like, I showed my dad a copy of the book too. He was like, I don't know why you would do that. I'm like, well, I do because you abused us, you know. Mom did too. It's all there. You can read it. It's true. You know, he didn't like that. Yeah, he was an old man, you know. And I didn't get an apology. He didn't apologize. He just said, "Oh, that's just the way it was back in those days." Right. That's why you were hauled into court on child abuse charges. It's like my parents were they got away with it. They got away with it. And my brother too. But the thing is that they didn't really because now the world knows. It's like too bad. I don't care. So the rest of my family members are not all that happy with what I'm doing. I don't really care. There's not that many left. I've got a sister living, a niece, a nephew, and some great niece and nephew. So that's it. That's my entire family. That's it. All everybody else has passed on, and so I don't care. Too bad, you know. I'm glad I told the story. I'm glad that I went public for my brothers because all of my brothers were abused by my parents, horrifically by my dad. And I'm glad that I told the truth for my sister Irene, who was also abused by my dad horrifically, and my mom. And Kathy was kind of the one that got the least abuse, my sister that's living today. And that's why she's walking around going, look, mom's rolling pin. That makes me so mad when I think about that. To just bring it right up and show it right to me. She knows. She's just my sister used to beat me up too, right? Which I don't talk a whole lot about, and I didn't really write about it in my books. But you know, she was just doing what my mom was doing. I did mention it a little bit that my sister was pretty harsh on me, but I didn't really go into the details that she was 5.5 years older than me, and she used to beat me up. And my mom said it was totally cool. My sister would be like, what are you saying? I'm going to beat her up. My mom would be like, yeah, give it to her. My sister would beat the shit out of me. And so the two of them, between them two, my dad and my brother, I really didn't have a chance. So that's why I was like, you know, I went public. I don't care. Too bad. You know. And my nephew, who I swore I wouldn't tell anybody about this, but my two nephews actually sexually molested me when I was 12. And I told him I would never tell, but I don't care anymore. I'm like, whatever. Nobody knows who he is anyway. The issue is that, you know, abusers always want you to stay quiet. Right? They don't want anybody to know what they've done, you know? And it's like, I'm so glad to be a public voice for all those survivors out here who can't say anything because their lives are being threatened. Many survivors are in that situation where the abusers are still living, whoever they are. And if they say anything, I mean, their lives have been threatened, you know, that if they tell, they're dead. And, you know, who wouldn't take that seriously? Abusers are manipulative and abusers. Abusers are abusers. That's what they do. They destroy, they abuse, you know, some of them kill. Right. My grandmother killed her son, so some abusers actually murder, right? So I come from a long line of abusive, rotten people. So there you go. But my sister had a daughter, and she did not abuse her, so that's good. The one that's living today, my niece, she loved my niece, and she brought her up very well. And you know, so I'm so thankful for that. And I didn't get to have any children, but I would like to think that if I did, that I would have broke the cycle, and I would, because I always wanted to have 10 children before I found out I was barren and wasn't going to be able to carry a child. So years before that, I always thought of having this big family, and I would just love my children, just love them. That's all. Bring them up right, you know, and just love them for the rest of my days and theirs, you know. And but that didn't happen. So unfortunately, but I'm absolutely positive I would have broke the cycle. But the thing is that so many times people just want people to stay quiet. You know, my nephew doesn't want people to know that him and his brother sexually molested me. And, you know, he actually did apologize for it. My other nephew couldn't because he was killed by a drunk driver. So would he have? Probably not. But when he was 25, he was killed by a drunk driver. My other nephew, he did apologize over the telephone. He could, once I went public with my books, he saw my books and he was like, he thought I had written about him. And he thought I was going to write that in there. I told him I didn't put it in there. And he was like, oh, because I said he did apologize, which was very, very good of him. And I thought that was awesome because not very many people will apologize for anything that they do that hurts another person. But what happened? I mean, literally, we were more like cousins because we were very close in age. So I was 3 months older than one of my nephews and a year and 3 months older than my other nephew. So we were like cousins, like more like cousins, or sort of even almost maybe brothers and sisters. We grew up very close. This is my oldest sister's sons. And they were at the house, and my mom wanted us to lay down and have a nap because maybe we were getting on her nerves or something. So my nephews were sleeping on the floor, and I was in my bed, and they sexually molested me while we were taking this nap. I was sleeping. I woke up with this going on, and I screamed bloody murder, and I stomped on them. I have talked about this a little bit, I think, before somewhere in one of my shows, but I literally stomped on them. I kicked them and stomped on them, and I was screaming bloody murder because I was already sexually abused by my brother when I was 8. And I was just like, why are all the boys touching me? I was just so upset. I was screaming bloody murder. And my mom came running in. What the hell is going on in here? And I'm like, I told her what they were doing. My mom was like, you can't tell. You can't tell anybody. Just the same with my brother. You can't tell. You know, why? Their parents need to know about this so they don't go around doing this to other girls. You know, it's not cool. So no, I wasn't allowed to say anything. And I to this day, I kick myself for not blurting it out to my older sister what they did. She would have killed him. She would have killed him. She would have been in prison for murder. My sister abused her kids too. My 2 nephews. My oldest sister did not break the cycle. She did not. She treated her children horribly, and so did her husband. And she actually used to abuse her husband because my sister grew up watching my parents battle it out and abuse the children. She was the oldest. So she was like, there's no way as an adult I'm going to allow somebody to abuse me. She became the abuser like my mom and abused her children and also her husband, who was much bigger than her, but he didn't stand a chance. So pretty sad, but real, true. And my nephew sits there, I miss my mom and dad. Oh, that's a fire alarm. That's going to be very loud. I'm not going out because I don't personally care. It's never a fire. If it's a fire, they'll come and get me anyway. So anyway, it's just, you know, these things are so sad. They really are. And my nephew sits around, I miss my mom and dad. He's like my sister. If that's how they can do it, I guess that's fine. If that's the only way they can deal with it, that's cool. Maybe they've made peace with it. I mean, that's totally cool. You know what I mean? Everybody's different. But for me, I'm just like, man, I'm just looking at the reality of it. It's like, that's not cool, right? So many times abusers just want the victim to stay silent and demand it, you know, if they're still living. So, and many times people just don't want to come forward with stuff because it's too painful. You know? So I know how hard it is. It's very, very hard. So I just went public because I needed to. You know, I wanted to for my brothers. and mainly because they were so horrifically abused by my dad, especially, and no, and they were just everybody just looked at them like they were losers, you know, because of their lifestyle and stuff. And I thought nobody knows what they went through as children, but I do. I saw it, and I'm saying something. So there you go. So I wrote my book, but it has made a huge difference in my ability to cope because it's like, you know, to be able to get that truth out and not carry that load by myself, you know, it made a huge difference. And for my inner wounded children, so that the world would know what happened to me when I was little, you know, that little girl that I used to be. It made me feel really good as an adult to be able to say, now the world knows what they did, and I don't have to carry that load anymore by myself, you know. Um, and I don't have to be ashamed because the abuse was not my fault, you know. So it's not your fault either, right? The victim, it's never the victim's fault. Abuse is a choice. No one has to abuse anybody. It's a choice. So, you know, just keep, you know, that's what I say. Just stand tall, keep your head up high, man. You know, we survived, and that's awesome. So many don't, right? So many children are killed and murdered and don't make it. And just because my family's not happy that I made it, they weren't happy when I was born. So they certainly weren't happy that I survived my childhood. Um, doesn't matter to me because I love myself and I'm happy that I made it and I survived. So, you know, kudos to all of us survivors who survived abuse. And, you know, you take really good care of yourself. That's really loud and annoying in here, so I'm going to go ahead and finish here today. But um, it could go on for about 20 minutes. Sometimes it does until the fire trucks come. And it might be a test of some sort. I'm not sure. But, you know, you take really good care of yourself. And if you can't cope and you don't know how you're going to do it, you make a phone call to a crisis line or call somebody. But you make sure that you stick it out because I want you to be here with me next week, same time, same place. I'm sticking it out, so you have to. No, I'm serious. I want you to win this fight with me. You know, every day that I wake up is a slap in my abusers' faces, every single one of them. So every single day, I'm like, yep, that's awesome, man. That's my revenge. I'm doing good, and you know, they couldn't kill me, and I'm actually enjoying life. That's a kick in their ass. You know what I'm saying? So have a wonderful day, everybody, and we'll talk to you again later. I have my show tomorrow night, Thursday night, but it's a biblical show, biblical counseling. If you're interested in that, that's tomorrow night. Should be in the upcoming live streams. And AU4H Radio will be on tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here. AU4H Radio on YouTube. So join us for that. We're looking at Wednesday, Wellness Wednesday, looking at mental health issues and talking about the issues of child abuse and all sorts of things, domestic violence. So if you want to catch us there, you can tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And otherwise, I'll be back around here next week, Wednesday, hopefully. And you take it easy. Have a good day, everybody. Talk to you soon.